In the early 80s, there was this kind of cult classic movie that came out called The Highlander. And it was the story of a race of beings who lived on Earth among us, and yet they were immortal, meaning that they couldn't die except for one thing. If they had their head chopped off with their heads. But it's an interesting movie because it looks at the idea of what it means to live forever and all the lives that are loved and lost and friendships that die and all these different things. And there's a song written by Queen that's basically Who Wants to Live Forever? Who wants to live forever? Well, the truth is, Christians, we want to live forever. Actually, if everybody's being honest, they do want to live forever. That's one of the reasons and driving forces behind so much of the fear that we see today is people are afraid of death. Well, John, in his second chapter, we'll get this right. In his second chapter, John talks about this for a minute, and he reminds us of the two different pathways that we have to go, and he warns us about how we can get pulled away from the right path. So in First John chapter 2, starting in verse 15, do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever. So John is basically saying here, listen, the world is gonna pass the eye test. And the eye test is when you look around and you see something, you go, oh yeah, I like that. I like that. And John says, listen, if it passes the eye test, it's not necessarily from God. Now remember, everything in the world was created good. But then what happened? We sinned. And so everything became depraved. Now, depraved doesn't mean that everything is bad. Depraved, however, does mean that there is no aspect of the world that was not touched by sin. There was no aspect of our lives that was not touched by sin. And so what it has now done is it has skewed things. And things that should have been 100% good and 100% beautiful have now become marred, and they've now become off. They've become off by just a little bit. And this is what John is telling us. He's saying, listen, the things of the world, they're going to look attractive. They're going to feel attractive. They're going to be attractive. As he says, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. These are things, however, that are not good. Let's think about this for a minute. The lust of the flesh. Well, that's kind of the mantra of the world these days, right? If it feels good, do it. Follow your heart. Follow your heart's desire. See, here's the thing, though. That's the lust of the flesh. Scripture tells us, Psalms tells us that the heart is deceitful, that it is absolutely a dangerous thing and that we have to be careful of it. And so when there are the things that we want in the world, then they skew us and they take us away from the priorities of life and they make it important. And the things that should be good now get twisted. And here's what I mean by that. Think about the things that you hold dear in your life. Probably your family. Now, on the surface, family is good. However, what if family becomes a greater priority than your relationship with God? And this is where Jesus was saying, you must hate your mother, your brother, your sisters, those things, because we need to make God our number one priority in life. Things that should be good, like family and relationships, take a greater priority over God if we're not careful. And then you look at the lust of the eyes. Now, this harkens back to Matthew chapter 6, verses 22 and 24, when Jesus tells us that the eye is the lamp of the body. And if your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. Remember, John does love this light and dark stuff, so he's basically echoing what Jesus says. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. And then the light within you is darkness. How great is that darkness? So John is saying, listen, you got to be careful what you even intake into your eyes, because then it turns into the lust of the flesh. And then the last one he says is the pride of life. Now, if you have listened to me speak from the platform recently, you know that I made the argument that pride is not good. And I dare you to find me a scripture that says that pride is good. The closest thing you're going to get is when Jesus gets baptized and God says, this is my son with whom I am well pleased. That is not pride. That is satisfaction in knowing that Jesus is doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. This is confirmation. This is confidence in what Jesus is doing. That is not pride. Pride is a word that we use and abuse, kind of like love. And I think we misuse pride. And John is saying here that the pride of life, pride of being proud of things, being proud of being alive, is a dangerous thing. Because remember what Jesus said. Whoever comes after me, if they want to gain their life, must lose it. That's very simple. If we are so stuck on having our lives, well, then we lose it. But if we want to gain life, then we have to be willing to give it up for Jesus. It's one of those paradox statements that Jesus gives, but it's important for us to remember this. And so John is saying, hey, be careful, little eyes, what you see. Be careful, little ears, what you hear. We need to be aware of these things and understand that we need to do the will of God so that we can live forever. All right, we'll continue with verse 18 tomorrow.